much. I'm going to be like, an Independence Day. I'm going to be Randy Quaid driving around the desert in my RV trying to get the aliens or God knows what else.
Hi, I'm Rick Higgins, and I'm chatting with Bette Kennedy today. She is a writer, editor, and environmentalist. And today we're going to be chatting about food waste. Now, in all transparency, I have to tell you, normally I'm in the mangroves cleaning up with her today. But you kind of shocked me, Bette, when you told me that 40% of food in America is wasted?
Yeah, I mean, remember when our parents used to tell us, eat everything on your plate, there's somebody starving across the world? Well, that's probably only gotten worse. The EPA and the USDA actually are the ones who have this statistic, which 30 to 40% of the food that's grown, that is manufactured, that is processed in this country is wasted. A lot of that is in your refrigerator. It's in your home. It's buying too much. It's making too much. It's American-sized portions that end up, of course, in a restaurant. You get this ginormous plate of food. I mean, anyone who's been to Europe, it has more reasonable portion sizes, but we kind of expect the bigger thing. And where do you think that goes? I mean, you can't resell it, so it usually goes in the trash. I work in a restaurant and was horrified by the amount of waste that I saw. The best we could do is grab a steak bone and give it to the cook to take home to his dog. I mean, that's not reducing very much. Also, just people in our own homes. We buy too much. We stick it in the back of the fridge. We forget about it. And if it looks a little, it's like, well, I can't use that. Well, you need to kind of rethink that a bit. One thing that alarmed me was in 2010, and this is the best baseline that they could get. The EPA and the USDA figured that we have 218.9 pounds of waste per person per year. That's food waste. That's nothing else. This is food waste.
So almost the size of me thrown away every year.
Yeah, okay. I mean, think about that. That is an insane amount, particularly when you do have a lot of people who are not getting enough to eat. I mean, one of the problems with the schools being shut down during the COVID epidemic is that's where a lot of kids got their meals for the day, breakfast and lunch. And it's an enormous problem when you have all of this food going into the waste. The environmental end of that is that's just rotting and causing methane, which is more greenhouse gases. So it's a very bad cycle. But there are things anybody can do. Starts with shopping. Plan your shopping better. Go in and really think about what you actually need for recipes. For Costco then, right? Well, that's just it. I was going to say the big warehouse stores, just because it's big and cheap, if you're really not going to use it, don't. And greens are probably one of the things that sort of, have a sort of a less of a shelf life. You get these giant things of salad greens. If you really aren't going to use that, then then maybe go for the smaller one. Maybe that's not the thing. Maybe you just really want to keep buying your paper towels or your big sacks of potatoes at Costco's. But you need to think about what are you actually going to eat. And when you bring it home, look, and just because maybe the carrot's a little wilted away, it doesn't mean it's bad. Doesn't mean it's rotted. Get creative. You can even go onto websites and say, I have carrots and this and that, and say, what do you have that's about to go south? The first thing you can do is make soup. Soup's great. You just, put anything in, and greens, wilted greens are perfect in a soup. Put them in your eggs. There's so many ways to get rid of stuff before it's really bad.
It's true. And just because it's ugly doesn't mean you can't eat it. It looks pretty on a shelf, but you're going to cut it up and put it in food anyway.
It's true. And there's actually there's a number of organizations now, like one is called Imperfect Foods, which depends on where you live. You can get this. I signed up for this last week just to kind of see what I get. Imperfect Foods is one of those, it's trying to save food from going in the landfill. And what they do is based on what you want, whether you want vegetables or fruit or some meat or whatever, it's taking some of those things. They're a little past their prime, or maybe they're not the perfect fruit. This is another thing that makes me crazy. How much food waste happens before it gets even into the stores? If an apple or a pear or a pepper doesn't look like the picture of what it's supposed to, it's considered not salable, which is insane. And anybody who's had a garden, you get a wacky looking tomato, you get a wacky looking pepper,
That's
they
true.
still taste the same.
They're pretty much the norm anyway.
Exactly.
So. Now, do you think that, so I'm going to jump a question here I haven't talked to you about before. Does that mean that maybe pre-processed and ultra-processed foods are easier on waste because they last forever, but then again, they pretty much kill you slowly?
Well, you kind of have to weigh that. I mean, it's one of there's this rule of try to do most of your shopping on the outside of a grocery store, because that's where the fresh things are and the refrigerated things, and then just use go inside for the process, if you want processed food. But that's also where the flour and the sugar and our staples are too. I think it's it's a personal thing. What kills me, absolutely makes me crazy in terms of food waste. And maybe this isn't waste as much, but it's just, we're kind of segueing a little bit into sort of ridiculous packaging, because that's sort of the plastic waste. Because when you talk about processed food, the main thing you're going to have is you're going to have a bag to throw away, or a box, or God forbid, styrofoam. So, and processed food just isn't that good for you. I mean, there's that. So yeah, every once in a while, we all need to fall back on that convenience. The one thing that I actually get sometimes as processed is, I love Indian food. I've tried to make it myself, and with rare exception, it's an enormous amount of work. So I tend to go out for it. I love it, but I can buy these little jars, glass jars of tikka masala sauce or vindaloo or whatever, and mix up. And that's a great way to get rid of, that's another great way to get rid of food that's maybe, not as fresh. So just put it on the plate is add some chickpeas.
Just smother it in vindaloo sauce.
Cut up those carrots. How about that onion, and cook it all down and throw it over some rice. I mean, there's a lot of ways to reduce that. And the other thing that I want to talk about with food waste, which is probably one of the biggest culprits, is the sell-by dates.
I was going to ask you that. As long as you're shopping along the edges and you look at this box of eggs and it says sell by tomorrow, so you don't buy it and it gets tossed, but they're still good, right? First
of all, I know that you've been to Europe and I've been to South America. And do you ever find eggs in the refrigerator case?
Oh, hell no. They're in the middle of the grocery store.
There's that. I honestly have not done the research to find out why we started refrigerating eggs in this country.
Oh, I have. It's really interesting. I'll tell you afterwards.
But we did. And so there's one thing right there is, when I was in Costa Rica, it was hot. I was in the middle of nowhere, dirt roads of chickens and dogs running all over. And I walked into a little bodega down there, and there's a giant stack of eggs. I mean, it was like 100 degrees. And I was like, huh. And I was like, okay. So, but back to the sell-by question. Yes, everything has a sell-by date. Sometimes it's a best buy, sometimes it's a sell-by date. With the exception of infant formula, there is nothing federally regulated that a product has to be tossed after a particular date. Now, some states will have their own individual rules regarding dairy products, usually milk or eggs or meat, and that's an individual. But so much food, and this isn't just in the grocery store. You see the guys going down at 10 o'clock at night in the Winn-Dixie, tossing all this stuff into the baskets to take it out. That's usually because the sell-by or the best buy date is up. And that's also a great way to sort of, if they have a bargain bin over there with the bananas that are a little too ripe or whatever, grab that stuff really cheap and take it home. Meat that you'll go in and you'll find, last day of sale, there's $1 off coupon. Take it home, stick it in the freezer, and you've just extended its sell-by date by 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Right there, and you've saved yourself some money. So part of that is the sell-by date is primarily a manufacturer's way, because they know that if you look at that if it's an unopened cottage cheese and it says, oh my God, it was last week, well, better throw it away. Well, you're going to go back and get more.
Mm-hmm.
So stop and think about before, first of all, the sniff test. Is it still good? If it's been opened, we're talking about, sometimes unopened. If it's been opened, still okay. Does it smell okay? I mean, this lets you some common sense here. 1 day of milk, obviously, unless it's gone bad, and we can all tell when milk has gone bad. 1 day,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, whoops, it's past the sell by. I can't use that. I mean, just use your common sense there. And another way to sort of help your budget too is there are a lot of places that again will sell food. Like a lot of times it's fruits and vegetables that have a special rack for things that are kind of on their way out. I will go get a big thing of eggplant. And I'll look at it and say, okay, that's probably not going to be great 2 days from now. So I take that evening and I make it into cutlets. I bake them and I put them in the freezer for when I need them. So another thing is planning ahead. If you see that giant bag of Brussels sprouts, for $2, 5-pound bag, well, nobody's going to eat that for dinner that night. But you can bring that home. And if you know how to do a little preserving, and it's not hard, there's stuff all over the web, books. I grew up preserving food with my grandma and my mom, so it comes natural to me. Oh, hey, get that home, wash it, clean it, blanch it, and put it in the freezer, and it'll last you for a very long time. So don't fall into the trap of buying it because it's cheap if you're really not going to do anything with it because it's still going to get wasted. So it's a way to save money, but also just plan ahead for your budget and what else you're going to do there.
No, all makes complete perfect sense to me. So just to sort of recap, shop the edges, don't buy more than you need, and stop throwing food away. Thanks, Bette, for coming on the show. A lot of the stuff we talked about before off camera that I was surprised. I didn't know some of this stuff. I kind of did some of it on my own, but we've actually been changing some of the things we've done after talking with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, and one thing that was a little encouraging, because I'm just going to say the government is always not a place you look to for hope and promise. The EPA and the USDA do have a goal and a program in place that is working with restaurants, with people, with food processors to reduce by 50% the amount of food waste by 2030. And there's information on that on their website. Also, the National Resources Defense Council has some really terrific information about food waste. There's a lot of organizations out there about food waste. That is one of my biggest bugaboos because people are going hungry. And it's wasted food to me is absolutely criminal. Yeah. So there's so many ways we can each do things individually to help that.
Well, I hope some folks out there can take some of this. And for the rest of you, look down in the comments section below. There'll be lots of descriptions, lots of links to some areas where you can help. Bette, thanks for joining us. And we're going to bring her back on again soon, folks. Lots more good stuff.
Thank you.
All right.